Hey, it's NPR's Book of the Day. I'm Andrew Limbong. Before we get into today's show, I want to tell you about a new offering we have here at Book of the Day. We have now launched Book of the Day Plus, which is a new way to support our work here at NPR. When you sign up, you get access to a special feed where you can listen to our new episodes sponsor-free. Nothing is changing about our regular show, but Book of the Day Plus is another way to help us keep giving you the books coverage you love. So please do sign up. We really appreciate it. You can find out more at plus.npr.org/book of the day. All right, on to today's show. There are the types of writers that plan. They've got a firm idea of the beginning, middle, and end of their story. They know the plot beats, know the characters, etc. And then there are writers like Yangsze Choo, who is not a planning writer. Her new novel is titled The Fox Wife. It's about a woman who is also a fox. There's other stuff, of course, but that's all she started with, that one idea. A woman who is a fox. She and NPR's Scott Simon get to talking about the characteristics of foxes across cultures and throughout time, and how they're wily and clever because they need to be. Similarly, Chu points out, to women. That's ahead.
This message comes from NPR sponsor Sony Pictures Classics with Daddy-O, a new film starring Dakota Johnson as a young woman who hails a cab and Sean Penn as a seasoned cabbie, taking a journey of discovery on a trip from JFK to NYC. Daddy-O is now playing only in theaters. This message comes from NPR sponsor Noom. Noom's first ever cookbook, The Noom Kitchen, helps you build new habits for a healthier lifestyle. Check out the Noom Kitchen for 100 healthy and delicious recipes to promote better living. Available to buy now wherever books are sold.
Snow is a fox. Really, a fox spirit, able to allure, to entrap, and to change shapes. Snow can take on the form of a woman referred to as Asan, and in 1908 she's on the hunt for the man who murdered her daughter. Snow's search for truth and justice through Manchuria and Japan is at the center of Yangsze Choo's new novel, The Fox Wife. And Yangsze Choo, the author of several best-selling novels, including The Night Tiger, joins us now from California. Thanks so much for being with us.
Thank you for having me, Scott. It's such an honor.
Well, the honor is ours. Help us understand the position that the fox can hold in various Chinese cultures.
I've always thought that the legend of the fox is so fascinating. In Chinese literature and also Japanese and Korean legends, the fox is a shapeshifter, as you mentioned, who can turn itself into a very attractive person. And folklore is full of these stories, many of them odd figments of stories, of foxes who interact with people, often tricking them, sometimes killing them, or making off with their property. The classic fox tale is that there's a scholar who's studying for the imperial exams late one evening when there's a knock at the door and a beautiful woman appears. Later on, of course, he discovers she's not human, which raises all sorts of questions about what is the story really about? But when I was a child, I read lots of these stories and I was always fascinated by the fox, by this creature. Why do they come at night? Why do they always interrupt people's exams? And what lies on the other side of the door? The sort of wildness and otherness. That's really interesting.
Snow is searching for a photographer named Baekdu Nikon. What does she think she knows about what he knows?
She thinks that if she finds him, it will be the answer to solve a lot of her anger and bitterness. So when I wrote this novel, I hadn't really planned it. I started off with the idea of a woman who's also a fox. And I thought about what sort of driving need would take you out of the grasslands of Mongolia, where she starts off with, to go into human society. And so she is looking to avenge her child, but I think it's a much more complicated narrative. And it turned out to be a story about old relationships and old loves.
I found myself very drawn to the character of Bao Gong, who, of course, is a retired detective. I shouldn't say, of course. A retired detective who's called into the mystery when a woman is found dead in an alley. He also kind of has a special power, which is useful for a detective, doesn't he?
Yes, he can hear truth from lies. I mentioned earlier that I don't really plan well, but when I started this novel and I wrote chapter 2, the words, the detective, appeared on my screen as I was typing them. And as I wrote about him, I felt like he could probably tell the difference between when people were lying or not. And I think, most of us actually can tell a lot about someone from their voice. Sound is one of the senses that we pay less attention to than we might have in the past. I think we live in an increasingly visual world of screens where we rely on eyesight. But when you close your eyes and really listen, they've actually found from studies that people can quite accurately tell, describe the person who's talking just from the tone of their voice.
Bao Gong muses at one point, and it was so beautiful, I wrote down the word, foxes are said to beguile people, charming tricksters. They will carry off your gold wine cups as well as your heart. But it goes on to say, yet easily killed or maimed, they lose paws, tails, and their own lives in gruesome ways. Boy, it makes you root for the fox.
Yes, I think that they are very vulnerable. The funny thing is that all over the world, the nature of the fox seems similar. When you look at Native American legends or the European tales, and to China, it is a wily, tricky animal. And one thing that struck me is that you're only a trickster if you don't have much power. Like the apex predators in these environments, like a lion, does not have to be particularly tricky. So I think the sense of being a fox and also the form of a young woman are both very vulnerable forms. And I try to bring it across in my book, where the foxes and the women are constantly under threat of being captured or imprisoned, or as a fox, trapped.
You grew up around the world, a Malaysian family of Chinese descent. Did you grow up hearing Chinese folklore?
I did. I read a lot of stories, and my mum also told me stories. It's a very rich world of mythology, which has many, many animal spirits in it. The fox is part of what they call the Wu Damen, or the 5 great clans. It is a folk religion from northern China, in which the 5 great clans who are worshipped as gods of wealth are the fox, the hedgehog, I think the weasel, the rat, and the snake. That's very weird to us because they sound more like pests, which also raises the question of why would you worship them? Or is it a way to placate them?
To placate them, because we fear them.
Well, maybe they eat up our wealth. If you think about in the past, wealth was probably grain.
How many stories do you have going on in your mind at any given moment, do you think?
Usually one, but the one story is made of many stories, which you might have noticed in The Foxwife. There is a Chinese tradition of writing notes and commentary in the margins of a book, and then the book will get passed around, and over the years, if some of the comments were particularly good or written by noted scholars, when the book was republished, they would republish it with these funny notes. So it'd be sort of like getting a copy of Beowulf with a comment by Jane Austen. Very interesting reading. And I wanted to do that with The Foxwife and add many, many stories. But then I also realized that perhaps people don't like to read footnotes. So we had to pull back from that. But in my mind, when you ask, is it one story or many? It is both. It is the one story which gives rise to many, many others, which I think is the nature of tales.
Yangsze Choo, her new novel, The Foxwife. Thank you so much for being with us.
It was my pleasure, Scott. Thank you so much for having me.
This message comes from NPR sponsor Shopify, the global commerce platform that helps you sell and show up exactly the way you want to. Customize your online store to your style. Sign up for a $1 per month trial period at shopify.com/NPR. Support for NPR and the following message come from Bombas. Bombas makes absurdly soft socks, underwear, and T-shirts. And for every item you purchase, Bombas donates another to someone facing homelessness. Get 20% off your first purchase at bombas.com/NPR and use code NPR.